Has expired. Honourable Amy Adams.
Mr Speaker, while other members are insisting on rolling around in the dirt, this government and this party got together this weekend to talk about what we've done for the environment and what we're doing for the environment. And so we've got a record that we can be proud of. And I want to particularly highlight the work of my colleague, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith, and local MP Colin King, who have come together to develop the Hikurangi Marine Reserve, the brand new whale sanctuary, the fur seal sanctuary, and it is the final culmination of a very successful community collaboration from the Te Korowai Group. And sir, I want to congratulate Minister Smith and the whole community of Kaikoura for their work in putting together the protection of those most important mammals in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, so while we're getting on with it, delivering real results, the actual record of Labour and the Greens when it comes to the environment is utterly woeful. It's woeful, Mr Speaker. Under Labour, propped up by the Greens, the reality is we had more coal, oil and gas energy produced than ever before. We had a 23% rise in our carbon emissions. We had 30,000 hectares of forestry cut down in the last 3 years alone. We had absolutely no meaningful action on water management, meaning that in the time they were in government, water quality issues continue to deteriorate, and you only have to pick up the last report from the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, where she absolutely lays out the woeful deterioration through those years to 2008, which this government is now getting on and fixing. So now, Mr Speaker, we're seeing what a Labour Greens government 2.0 would look like. We've already seen, of course, proposals for the Kiwi tax on the Kiwi net. We've heard them roll out their intentions to have Kiwi insurance, adding the 97th insurance company to the New Zealand market. And today we've got Kiwi Wood. Kiwi Wood! Finally a policy Shane Jones can get behind. I can only assume that David Cunliffe is so sick of having brickbats thrown at him that he's now taking steps to ban bricks. But if instead of the Labour Party telling the forestry industry how they should operate, there's one lesson that the Labour should be taking from the forestry industry, and that's about trimming and culling dead wood, a lesson that the Labour Party have completely failed to learn. Now, we've heard from my colleague Nick Smith. We've heard from Nick Smith exactly how much Australian voters punished Labour for getting into bed with the Greens, because they saw how damaging that association was. They saw what it did to an economy very, very similar to New Zealand's, as Nick's told you. But in New Zealand, what's really interesting is that the infighting and the divisions have already begun. They haven't even got into bed yet. They're just trying to argue over whose side they're going to sleep on, and already they can't work together. So on mining policy, we know the Greens would ban it. The Greens would ban it. Labour has said, it's a significant part of the economy and we won't be turning off the tap. David Parker, of course, is on record describing the Greens' monetary policy as unhelpful and unnecessary. On cannabis, the Greens have always wanted it to be legal, and Labour, of course, take the opposite view. We've got Matiria Ture questioning the integrity of Labour MPs and taking corporate gifts. Phil Twyford describing the Greens as simply wrong on environment policy. Grant Robertson, of course, came out attacking Kennedy Graham's blog as pure politics and just wrong. And while Matiria Ture has been complaining about Labour nicking policy from the Greens, we've got Claire Curran complaining about the white anting going on by the Greens encroaching on Labour territory. So clearly it's happy bedfellows over there. My favourite, though, has got to be Russell Norman coming out telling Trevor Mallard to, and I quote, "Go back to closing schools and making housing unaffordable like you did in government." So isn't it interesting that today we've had Russell Norman talking about housing affordability when he was on record not very long ago and quite rightly pointing out that between 2002 and 2007 house prices doubled and the current account ballooned and Labour did nothing. Wise words indeed from Russell Norman for once. So what do we know? We know they can't work together, they contradict each other, they don't trust each other, they don't like each other. And the one thing we know, Mr Speaker, is that if you can't run yourselves, you can't run a country. We've seen it in Tasmania. They suffered under it for 16 years and now the Labour Party have been punished with the worst result they have had, a result they will take a long time to recover from, and that is the lesson to New Zealand, Mr Speaker. Do not make the mistake of Australia. Do not let a Labour Greens coalition destroy this country.
Honourable Annette King.
Mr Speaker, I have to say to the member who's just resumed